A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's a wet, rainy morning right here in the Federal Capital Territory. I hope you're driving safe if you're going to be on the roads today. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, it's bright and beautiful on this side of the divide. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
With a little sprinkle of rain here and there. It's August 10. I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome to the program. Well, it just so happens that ordinarily it will be a school day, but it is not. Of course, because many of the students are on holiday, and perhaps add to that the fact that, well, some of them are actually still in school, summer schools, and all of that. But what catches our interest this morning is the initiative of the IGP, the Acting Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, launched a standard operating procedure manual for Schools Protection Squad and organized a workshop on the Safe Schools Initiative for strategic police managers. Well, we are not hearing about safe school initiatives for the first time, because even as we speak, the national coordinator of the Safe School Initiative at the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning reiterated that there's a commitment by the federal government to the Safe School Initiative to the tune of 15 billion naira in the 2023 budget. The question is, so is there a correlation? Maybe there is, maybe there is not. You may want to find out some of these things, perhaps just to ensure that the needful is done. The safe school managers and all of that are rolled out. The standard operating procedure is a comprehensive document, as you can see, that provides clear guidelines for the smooth operationalization of the Schools Protection Squad. And of course, right there on your screen are some schools that were attacked and the dates on which they were attacked in recent time. It is definitely a concern that all of us should be giving attention to. One of the challenges or questions that I will be asking is, there definitely has to be some kind of collaboration with the people. There has to be some nexus between the police and the communities. I want to believe that this school protection squad is also thinking about that one, because part of the mandate, we understand, is to include the generation of information and development of intelligence, community policing, partnerships, police-public cooperation, and interagency collaboration. Question. Are we also building trust?
Very good question. Are we building trust? And again, this is instructive because of, the conversation, unending conversation on the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, particularly in the northern part of Nigeria. And we know that some of the states that are contributing the most to those numbers are not necessarily the states impacted by, insurgency in the northeast and the northwest as well. In fact, in states that are not necessarily, experiencing the banditry challenge the most, also have a high number of out-of-school children. So the question then is, or the cause, for reflection would be, what are those factors, contributing to the number of out-of-school children in those states of the Federation? Is it, a lack of development or population explosion? So the Safe School Initiative has come at a right time. But as I said, it's not the first of its kind. As a matter of fact, in 2013, at the peak of insurgency in the country, we recall that the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom also launched the Safe School Initiative as, the first of the series of activities under the World Economic Forum program at the time, which was funded to the tune of $10 million, I believe. So what happened, to that initiative? We must, be more accountable to the process of sustainability of programs. Nigeria is high on a lot of good ideas to solve socioeconomic problems. But the issue is sustainability. So this is the way to go, to encourage again, shore up again the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria's north. And, well, we know that this program is going to start with a pilot of 18 states that are most impacted. But then again, as I said earlier, there are a number of other states also that have that challenge of out-of-school children who must ensure that our children return to school. So we hope that the program would, stream down, further down to the south. Maupe and Chimilin.
Noble idea by the police. I mean, it's good to see that they're thinking in the direction of protecting our schools. We've seen way too many kidnap attempts on schools in our country, from Lagos to the northern parts of the country. It's been very disheartening, and those stories are usually very heart-wrenching. I cannot forget in a hurry. I mean, let us even for a minute. In fact, which story do you want to even forget? Which story do you even want to say, you should forget? Because all of them are equally important. Is it the one in Buniyadi where boys were slaughtered in broad daylight? They were not even allowed to get out from their beds before they were murdered. Is it the girls who were kidnapped? Is it Chibok? Where do you want to go? But the one I can never, ever forget is the one that happened in Niger, where mere babies were kidnapped. Children between the age of 3 to 5, 7, they were kidnapped for many days. And it was very difficult to get these children out of captivity. I couldn't even imagine, the kind of, if these people had if they were humans at all, who, kidnap children at that age because you're trying to get back at the state, or you're trying to get money from the state government or from the federal government. It's very difficult to imagine. But, this morning I found myself in a dilemma, and I really hope that this is something that, our security agencies think about. Response. Because essentially what this is about is what should happen in the event of an emergency. Who to call? How do the teachers, who will be the first responders in that situation, and school authorities, how should they react? We've heard, especially when you look at what happened in Chibok, there were so many questions as to, why didn't the principal call this? Why didn't the head teacher call that? People seem to be at a loss whether they were in a state of panic, and then all sort of theories and conspiracies came up as a result of, the lack of reaction. But then you have to think and ask yourself, if you ever found yourself in an emergency situation, who do you call? On my way to work this morning, driving to work under the rain, I saw dead bodies. I was sure I saw more than one dead body along the road. And in that moment, I asked myself, who do I call? I know that there's an emergency number. I called 112. It rang and rang and rang and rang and rang. I made the attempt up to 3 times before I eventually was able to get through. And that took persistent calling. That this number has to work. Could it be that is it that emergency workers don't work overnight? Is it that, it's too early in the morning to be calling them? But it's an emergency number. We're even grateful that we have an emergency number to call. What about places where there are no emergency numbers to call? I mean, every state, even though I understand sometimes that the FRSC says these numbers work throughout the federation, I don't know whether at the time they're making a differentiation between 112 and 122. I am uncertain. But if right here in the Federal Capital Territory, it took persistent calling to ensure that such an emergency number worked. I imagine what it is like for, this is not to discourage you. I know that in Lagos, you have 767. I have tried that number on more than one occasion, and it has worked. I hope it's still the case, because it's been many years since I was in Lagos. I do not know. Lagosians, you guys can let us know. But I think that our security agencies need to work on response time. When people call, and this has been the bane of security almost all over the country. Is it in the attacks that happen in Jos or wherever it is that attacks are happening? When citizens say when they call, or first and foremost, they don't even know who to call. Then when they do eventually think of somebody to call, the response time is so slow. So I'm hoping that while this is very noble and very commendable on the part of the police, that they're saying that it's extremely important to put such an standard operation procedure in place, and that, people know what to do. I believe that there will be training, for teachers and, for school authorities and emergency workers, etc. And for this special school squad that has now been set up, But beyond that, what we really need is that when people call, they really need to be able to respond in good time. Chamberlain.
You know, that's why I'm just thinking I needed to ask the police some of these questions. It's kind of challenging because, yes, response time is a huge factor in all of these things because several people in, is it Benue, is it Jos, different parts of the country who say when these attackers come in the dead of the night, they call and call and call, nothing happens. Sometimes you hear the reports that reporters file across the country say these chaps operate for hours and they don't get any help. Yes, it's a good initiative to ensure that these kind of things are addressed. But I also like to find out from them, I mean, the schools, they'll be starting with 18 states. So, well, it's a good initiative, at least. At the time, remember, there was a time that the federal government themselves shut down, I think, some unity schools and several other schools. Here in Abuja at the time, they said it was owing to security threats. So with this, we expect that, that will be history. That will never happen again because this procedure is expected to ensure that it's a stopgap measure. It staves off any addresses, any of such threats. But these things are, it's a system. For instance, the data that we're going to use and address all of these things. If people have CCTVs and they have information, can we actually respond and then trace those people in good time? So I think, yeah, if I remember, he did say that they expect several other agencies to partner and work well on this. I'd like to know the level of involvement of several of those other agencies because they need to be hugely involved in this for it to succeed beyond, at least, get the kind of result that we all desire. So I'll just hold on a bit and get to ask them all of those concerns that we all have about how we need to ensure that our schools are safe because if it's the same policemen that we meet on the road every day, I'm hoping for the best. But we'll have to wait and see how it happens. Good initiative, but there are several other questions. So we'll hold on that one. So, oh dear. We're going to go ahead and take you through some of the dailies now. I don't think you expect to see this kind of story this morning because it's not a smiling matter. You have to pity us journalists too. Sometimes when we see this, how to break this news to you, it could be a little challenging. Look at New Telegraph, for instance, and the lead story. Fuel to cost more as ex-depot price hits 600 naira. What can you say? Now, this is so because they say it was 480/495 naira as at July 18. So, and then force majeure declared in October, still in effect, and LNG exports to Europe disrupted by vandalism. Wow, who would have thought? You thought that at the time that they all had this figured out, immune, shielded from all of these kind of interruptions, but if they're vandalizing that now and it's disrupting our supply, remember we have commitments to countries for years ahead. So if this is happening, oh dear, you can only imagine. It's better imagined, really, but that's what they're telling us now.
Well, at least I'm sure usually in those kind of contracts there will be, as you said, force majeure. That's something that's certainly outside the control of the supplier and also of the recipient. So there must be a clause in their contract. But it's really, really disheartening, you know, just where our vandalism knows no bounds. We destroy public infrastructure, excuse me, meant for our own good. We destroy the one meant for, you know, the good of the country. I don't know what's going on, really. I don't know where it's going to stop. When people say, oh, I was only trying to eat. They were only trying to eat. Well, so those are not the only people. Your food is in the pipelines.
You know, this is, and you know, the implication when countries can't do business with you because they feel you can't deliver, they feel if there were arbitration, I may not get the best of it. It is a very bad scenario, very bad situation that no country wants to be in because it has huge implications, not just for the government, but even for businesses, citizens themselves who are expected to transact with those other countries. Because what will happen is they'll then say, no, for arbitration, not in your country. We'll have to go to another country. Sometimes you lose all the leverage. And if anything happens, they squeeze you out. So it's a scenario nobody wants. So now we need to grapple with this. They say it's forces of demand and supply. So it went from 540 naira in different parts of the country. Lagos was 400 and something to 617 naira in less than a month. And now, according to this report, it's about to go up again.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, at some point, because part of what is also forcing this up is Forex. And we'll see that in another paper. It's Forex. So at some point, I want to imagine that the federal government, you know, might want to intervene, might want to look in that direction, even though in the president's speech, you recall that president's speech where he said that they will intervene when they deem it necessary. At this point, if Forex is just, you know, going away with the wind.
Why isn't it necessary already?
I want to imagine, because I can't imagine I will start to buy petrol at 1,000 naira per litre. And it does appear that that's where we're headed. So I can't even imagine it. Let's not imagine it, please. Let's just read the daily as is and hope that those who are concerned, you know, those who have, you know, responsibility around this particular story will do something about it. Are there any more stories?
I think for now we're okay with this one.
You do with that one. You're still trying to internalize it.
Read another. No. This one is okay for now.
Really? Well, sorry about that. Daily Trust is the next one, and just talking maybe writing on the back of that. Look at that. Naira inches towards 1,000 naira to the dollar at parallel market.
Wow.
That's what we're seeing right here. Sells for 925 in Kano, 917 in Abuja, 890 in Lagos. Falls 19.8% since FX unification, so they are also monitoring just by how much it's falling. Official window no longer reflective of the market dynamics. That's what, I don't know who's saying that. Page 4 is where you need it. You need to see it. I remember that, I don't know whether that was deliberate though, because some people also say that they'll look to what the, Mr. Wale did when he was being screened. People are, you know, permutating that he could be the new Minister of Finance, and people were asking him about, when the senators asked him about the current exchange rate, and he was saying it should be no more, is it 700 naira? To the dollar, and he's warning, you know, he's sending a note out to speculators because he believes that this is being driven by speculation. But being driven by speculation or not, this is what the current rate is.
But they also talk about the supply side.
Yes, so what are we doing on the supply side? And if you're forcing, as I think, who was saying that on the program yesterday? I think it was one of our guests who was saying that on the program, that if you force legitimate concerns to go to the black market to get their FX, then you will continue to drive up the rate. So do we have enough? Because now that it's been liberalized in the CBN and, you know, also that windows there are, do we have enough to meet the demands of these people, that legitimate businesses within the legitimate windows, let's put it that way? Do we have enough? Or is it that somehow, even within the system, there are those who are sabotaging? Because you cannot rule this out, Chamberlain. I can tell you that within the confines of some banks, you will find that they will find ways to frustrate you. Let me give you an instance. We know that in this, before now, if you get, say, if you sent money from abroad, maybe $200, $500, sometimes banks will tell you, and they know that these rates are different depending on which denomination you have. They'll tell you that, oh, we have dollars, we can give you dollars, but what we have is $50 or $10 or $5 as the case might be. And you know that they do not go for the same rate. And this was the time before, you know, banks started giving, started getting the same rate. Because of course, when people get their money and you know that the rate on the black market is different from what the banks are giving, they want their dollars so they can go and change it on the black market, right? Banks know that the rates are different. $50 doesn't go for the same rate as a $100 bill goes for in the black market. So they'll tell you this is what we have. But right there within the bank, you will see malams or I'm trying to use, or traders, let me look for another word. I don't want to put anybody in trouble right now, but traders, who deal in Forex, who will tell you, madam, how much do you have? Or how much is your money? We can change it for you. And they are right there within the confines of the bank. This is not something that is a secret.
It means the banks see them.
The banks see them. They know them. They use them.
There must be something in there for them then.
So these are the kinds of collaborations that can sabotage and a system that is supposed to be good. So I'm asking myself, why is it that the banks don't want to give you the new rates? Why wouldn't they just change it for you? They might say, no, we want to give you the dollars. If the current rate from the bank and the black market is the same thing, I don't need the dollars anymore. Can you give me my money in Naira? Do you understand? So there are big questions to be asked as to what exactly is going on. And, well, we'll see how these matters unravel. But CBN is obviously acknowledging that they need to work on the supply side. We need to work on the supply side of FX.
Oh, yeah.
That is also a rider here on this story. And then they have this infographics for you. Naira fluctuates across states. So the story is right there on the front page. I don't want to believe that there's sabotage. I also believe that there is plenty of work that needs to be done to bring in the much-needed foreign investment that should buoy up not just our foreign exchange,
even local
earnings,
investments.
but also
if they
our
do certain
space.
things about local investments, it will have a huge impact. You have to have a strong base before you talk about the foreign investments.
Okay, you also see right there, Sanusi meets Niger military leaders, briefs Tinubu, so the story is also right there. The Sultan-led NSCIA opposes force economic sanctions. Learn from Libya crisis, bishops tell ECOWAS. Ulamas get Tinubu's nod for mediation. I now eat dry ice. Ousted president laments hardship. So the story is on page 9 of the paper.
Still doing interviews?
Yeah, now look at the story. It was, can I ignore it? Akpabio under fire over comments on senators' holiday enjoyment allowance. Page 10 is where you find details. Let's leave it there for the trust.
So much to take in this morning, Malpe and Chamberlain. By the way, there was, a quiet and unannounced addition to the pump price of petrol earlier in the week in Lagos from 568 naira per litre to 575 naira per litre. It was unannounced, but that's what's happening in Lagos. At least I can confirm that I've begun to buy petrol at 575 naira per litre. I don't know how much you're getting it for, Ayo.
I'll be getting it today.
You'll be getting it today. Okay. All right. I don't want to think about any further addition. Too depressing to reflect on. But on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, we have this one. As ECOWAS leaders meet today over Niger, Southern Middle Belt leaders, Catholic bishops, Islamic clerics, NGE warn against military action. Sanusi meets coup leaders, visits Aso Villa after Niamey return. It's a page 3 read. And of course, the former Emir of Kano and former CBN governor also visited Niger, the coup leaders. In his personal capacity, he announced, but with the approval of Mr. President. And we heard him, interacting with journalists, explaining that he has a right to do so as a leader, but of course with the approval of Mr. President. Uneasy lies the head of ECOWAS, amid, pressure from everywhere for a successful intervention in the Niger coup. And a few more stories. Of course, this is a follow-up on our conversation with the chairman of the Tax Reform Policy Committee yesterday. Presidential Committee on Tax Policy says customs, 62 MDAs may stop revenue collection. FIRS more suited for role. That's a page 6 read. And there's also, right beside that one, Tinubu meets El Rufai Wike. That's a page 23 read. Now, it's a follow-up on the confirmation of some ministers and some being left out. Or when will that important announcement be made? We'll look at that for you. And lastly, from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, we cannot ignore this one. GlaxoSmithKline's exit. Review impact of economic reforms on real sector. Nasima urges federal government. So we don't have any more withdrawals of major industries providing job opportunities for Nigerian youths. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and I don't know what you make of it, but it's been in the news. Look at it. Cost of governance. Nigerians fume as Akpabio announces holiday allowances for senators. Stories on page 4. Well, he did say, I take that back. Does it mean that he wasn't giving back?
Well, it appears, if you watch the video, it appears that it happened after some intervention.
Well,
you know.
he took it back.
Yeah, he took it back.
Whether or not we gave it back.
Whether or not you believe the second announcement, that's another matter.
No, it's there. That prayer, I mean, it's even on Channel's Twitter handle. Oh, so X handle now. Lament, recklessness, and groanings. No issue if the payment is part of their entitlement, according to stakeholders. Akpabio's statement taken out of context, work of mischief makers, that's ascribed to Group. Senate President names 50 APC senators, 18 PDP, 4 LP, 2 SDP, 1 APGA as committee chairman. Find the details of that on page 4 of the paper this morning. Among other stories is that one by NAFDAC, and this is for the sake of children. Exclusive breastfeeding reduces risk of breast cancer in women. That story is on page 4 of the paper this morning, and right above the nameplate. Collaborate with organized private sector to curb divestments, develop sustainable action plan. That's NECA to the federal government. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Okay, take a look at Vanguard next. Niger Coup. Sanusi meets junta leaders, briefs Tinubu. Don't adopt military means to force illegal government out of power. SMBLF. So what does SMBLF suggest then? And all these other groups who are, coming up with one plan or the other. Okay. I think this is easier said than done anyway. So, and then you see NGE calls for strategic engagement, diplomacy, says military intervention an aberration. Urges Tinubu governors to fulfill promises on economic interventions. NSCIA advises ECOWAS against sanctions on Niger, urges dialogue. Niger ex-rebel launches anti-coup movement and first sign of internal resistance. There you go. And then...
that's what we've been waiting to see.
Well, they actually did
are
say...
the people of Niger happy with this coup, or, are they kicking against it?
Yeah, but part of what we're also told behind the scenes is that, look, the military took over. And so, do you expect to see people going out there to protest if they won't use brute force to shut them down?
Very true.
What do you expect?
Very true. But by now, we should have heard some, some engagement on international. I know that, yes, they speak French, but I'm sure there must be one or two pro-democracy activists who can manage English.
Yes, and that's why they also should have looked through. I mean, there are several ways. Or else they're saying that is fine, they're okay with it, but they need to speak up if they are not. So that is that one. And then I think a lot of these other groups should ensure that state governors deliver on their promises, because look, the economy of states, a lot needs to be done. Edo Exco condemns Shaibu over impeachment saga. And then I'm going to talk about this NFF matter. I'm sure we don't have the back page, but it says Falcons bonus row. We're broke. NFF gives condition to pay Super Falcons outstanding monies. And then you're wondering, excuse me? Aren't you people... Wait, are they saying that they're going to use the bonus of the Falcons to run...
thank God enough that...
to run an NFF?
FIFA says they're paying those girls directly. I'm so grateful to God on their behalf that those girls are getting paid directly by FIFA. I hope nothing changes the plan. This is me. My hands are folded in prayer.
I think FIFA should do it for all competitions.
Lifted up in supplication that it remains that way.
Yes,
NFF,
we'll further
for your money.
We'll further supplement supplicate by please let it be across all football competitions. You know why? When these chaps, when these men, these people all contest for NFF president, you need to see how many of them were there. They had fantastic. They said they had fantastic manifestos. I will bring this, I will bring that, and now they want to use the money of the bonus to run this place. No, that's not that cannot be.
That will not work.
You said you were going to do stuff. You promised heaven and earth. Go and look for your money and do this. Don't use bonus of players, both male, female, under 20, under 21, under 19. Nothing should go to federations. Let it go to the players. They don't like it.
If you want your support,
resign.
Go and ask FIFA for your own support. But please, the money
you can't keep deceiving people all the time.
For the girls, please.
And then you see in the politics too. They promise heaven and earth, then you get there, then they start telling you, oh, I didn't know that this is what it was before. And then anybody can go and contest. Let us all do good. We promise that nothing and go and deliver nothing. No, come on, guys. We can all do better than this. NFF, nah, that won't work. Okay, what? Do you have more?
Yes, see, we do. There's the Guardian here, and you also see right there, long road to peace as ECOWAS coup leaders maintain position. So that story is also on page 6. Don't forget that the ECOWAS is supposed to meet today and, you know, decide what new steps they should be taking to, you know, what new steps or, you know, what next they're going to be doing since their ultimatum since expired. They've sent envoys. Nothing has quite come out of that yet, but it'll be interesting to see. Page 6 is where you'll find details. You also see right there, Reps orders AGF to produce IPIS officer. Queries AMCON budget office. So the Reps are still going on with that probe. Which is, you know, taking the attention of a lot of people, rightfully so. Page 4 is where you find details. Why extension of UTME result validity impracticable by Oloyede. Stories on page 3. People have said, why should when I write JAMB, go through that amount of trauma, why should the result last for only 1 year? Why can't it be 5 years like WAEC? Why can't it be? Anyways, I think
these agencies need to think a lot. Look at how much dollar is to the naira now. Look at how much people are buying petrol.
My dear, I don't think
how much things cost.
The truth of the matter is the amount of money to write JAMB has since fallen drastically. That's the truth. But the tension that children go through, students, I remember, you know, speaking with people on ICANN recently, and I was telling them about how, you know, I know that people who write ICANN exams, how traumatized they usually are when their results come out. And I said the only other body I know if commands that amount of trauma is JAMB for students. So, I mean, you go through that, and then you now find out that you have to do it every year if you didn't pass it. That will really, or you didn't get an admission, because sometimes it's not about passing, it's about whether you're able to get an admission. You have to do it again. That certainly is not something to smile over. So I hope that they can work on it, but hey, this is why he's explaining this. I think that for those who are interested, page 3, I think ICANN people are working on the trauma that they're causing to their own people as well. But we'll leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Yeah, well, that's it.
I guess I'll now look at the papers this morning, yes.
And, well, if that ends a look at our papers this morning, we'll take a break now. There's so many more issues to unpack for you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
My fellow citizens,
this is President Bola Tinubu's second nationwide broadcast after his inauguration on May the 29th. And it comes at a time when the nation is still grappling with the rise in the price of petrol as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy convoluted by high inflation, industrial action by resident doctors, and threat of strike action by organized labor. And the president wasted no time in making a case why subsidy must go and what is done so far.
To be blunt, Nigeria could never become the society it was intended to be as long as such small, powerful, yet unelected groups hold enormous influence over our political economy and the institutions that govern it. The whims of the few should never hold dominant sway over the hopes and aspirations of the many.
The gains of subsidy removal are already trickling in, according to President Bola Tinubu.
In a little over 2 months, we have saved over 1 trillion naira that would have been squandered on the unproductive fuel subsidy, which only benefited smugglers and fraudsters. That money will now be used more directly and more beneficially for you and your families. For example, we shall fulfill our promise to make education more affordable to all and provide loans to higher education students who may need them. No Nigerian student will have to abandon higher education because of lack of money.
While appealing to Nigerians to show understanding, the president explains how 200 billion naira of the 500 billion naira loan will be deployed to support transportation and agriculture across Nigeria.
We have made provision to invest 100 billion between now and March 2024 to acquire minimum of 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG fuel buses. These buses will be shared to major transportation companies in the state using the intensity of travel per capita. Participating transport companies will be able to access credit under the facility at a maximum per annum 9% interest rate with 60 months repayment period.
Part of measures to support manufacturing enterprises and MSMEs is a provision of single-digit loans by the federal government.
We are going to spend 75 billion between July 2023 and March 2024. Our objective is to fund minimum of 75 enterprises with great potential to kickstart a sustainable economic growth, accelerated structural transformation, and improved productivity. Each of these 75 manufacturing enterprises will be able to access 1 billion credit at a maximum of 9% per annum, with maximum of 60 months repayment for long-term loans and 12 months for working capital.
The president has consistently maintained that the challenges of today is for a greater good in the future. Whether or not citizens agree with his position will be interpreted by their response as individuals and groups in the coming days. Jeffrey Uzongo, Channels Television News.
Welcome back, Mr. Michael Mary. As you've seen, the former DG of NOA joins us this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, I mean, for many who may have heard us read the headlines this morning, they'll be demoralized to a very large extent in terms of the kind of stories that are making the rounds, the economy, the reality of the economy. And the economy knows no political party, knows no family. It is what it is. So, one of the key questions, at least, will be, politicians got us to this point that we're in now. Over the years, because many will say, look, if they had done certain things right, I know you may say it's relative, perhaps we might not have been where we are today. So even though they campaign and tell you lofty promises, what they intend to do they actually really have this country at heart? Because from the results we see, it's really tough for lots of families these days.
You see,
Excuse me.
from my experience, I know that the people are yearning for change, for things that will make life a little bit better for them in the communities. So when politicians come, we have those who have ideas, we have those who have promises. And most of the times, those who have promises win the election. So they win the election not based on the ideas that you want to put, together and implement for the good of society. So when they win the election based on the promises they made, they come here, they don't even understand the institution, democratic institutions, they don't understand governance, they have come to make it. So what is the reason? Now you find, first, what is the motive behind the promises that you have made in the first place? So I can get an opportunity to go into government and perhaps make money. So, like someone said, yes, politics has now become an industry, short term with a harvest period. So everybody comes in within 4 years, let's just harvest and go. They don't even think of life after, that they will be part of society, that office of citizen of the Federal Republic remains permanent. If you go into government, it's just 4 years. They call you by whatever title for 4 years. After that, you come back and remain and become a citizen, and you have to enjoy the promises you made, which you never kept.
But they don't seem to care about all of this. All it appears they focus on just getting there at all costs.
Because people believe they can make money that will last them a lifetime in the Nigerian system. And look, the Nigerian system is such that has little capacity to check institutional infractions. We don't check. You just appoint somebody into any office. You don't, no checks, nothing. He just stays, steals, and go. Nothing happens. Feeble attempts at, punishing people or investigating to punish people, but it doesn't go beyond just what they do. And they quickly make friends with the next person in government, and everything is abandoned. We come back to square one. So the institutions are not strong enough to even support afterlife, office misdemeanor committed in offices.
How easy or difficult is it going to be to fix this, the institutional part? Because if we don't have those very, very strong institutions, no matter who the president or governor is, we will have a challenge still.
All the institutions that appear to be strong, that can help wield state power, military, police, and all of that, they're all weak. They're all very weak, with due respect to the efforts of our men in the armed forces and other services.
Is it the politicians that weaken them?
Yes, simply because, like I said earlier, those who make promises don't even understand the institutions they are coming to use for governance. So when they come, it's how to maintain. They use this for regime protection, for self-perpetuation, and so forth and so on. So when you have people kowtowing to the whims and caprices and wishes of leaders, they will not help to maintain the situation. Everybody is appointed based on who you know, not what you know, or how to do that. Most of us that find ourselves in government is just based on who we know.
But is there of course there is hope. I mean, I was going to ask if there is hope. This will connect with the elections, how we elect our leaders and get certain things right. There will always be a huge debate about that one. But it has to be asked, is there anything really to actually say, given the way we conduct ourselves, how we do our elections, there can be hope?
You see, of course there is hope, so long as we live. If not for hope, many of us will not be where we are. You see, I have our leadership recruitment process, I keep saying, has some faulty elements that characterize that environment. If you want to be a politician, in other places that are trying to develop their own kind of democracy, or what they call democracy in their client, you find that people go for internship everywhere for one thing or the other, even political internship. You see interns in the presidency, in the state assembly, and the national assembly, and so forth. You see interns there. But that is towards leadership recruitment. We don't have it here. We don't have them. We don't see people don't germinate through the right wrongs of leadership.
Oh, so wait. Maybe you should explain your understanding or perspective of leadership recruitment process, because to some people, they may say, yes, in other climes, they already know who may likely be the next president or mayor or anything, because they see a certain class of people having gone through certain schemes and foundations. But yes, we don't have that here. And then sometimes here, it appears as though it is just election that takes a large chunk of what people refer to as our leadership recruitment process. Is that what you mean?
No, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
You see, Nigeria by now should have a development plan that everybody, irrespective of your political party persuasion, will accept that this is our national plan. We will not deviate from it. So whoever comes into power, no matter your party manifesto, must align to these national goals that are encapsulated and agreed by everybody. So if you are leaving university, or you are a student in the university, and you want to be a politician, you go to a political person's office, you see that the goals you are taught about the aspirations of your country are not different from what these leaders are trying to implement. So you are learning not just the art of governance, but what do you say, imbibing the values, the virtues of your nationhood. So you want to protect it as you move along. Whether you eventually find yourself working in any office as an administrator, or you follow those files. But here, it's not that way. This is a country where people come to learn on the jobs at the highest level.
And it's really disheartening, to be honest. I think that's why a lot of people were looking to the ministerial screening. Even some people say it's early days yet. After our elections, that part of the reason why we hold elections is to see how we can change the system. I know that there's plenty of focus on the federal government, and rightfully so. They still have a huge chunk of whatever comes from the federation account. But then there's also the question of the states. Are there any states right now that you are looking at and you're thinking, why are we not looking at the models that have been adopted in these states? Are there any that have caught your interest of late?
Believe me, Maokwe, I can't. I can't, with all sense of honesty, tell you that a single Nigerian state is implementing a value-driven development goal that can be sustainable after the person exits office. Because what you see in most states, well, maybe one or two you can say, you can give them, even at that, is still below average. They implement development goals based on impulse. It's not based on any plan. So how do I do this so I can be elected for a second term? That is just the kind of development model we see. What will give me a second term?
And for those who are already in their second terms?
It's my bye-bye. Let me take my pension and gratuity and go away.
Well, big question. But let's reverse back now, to a time when you were once in government and you had a very interesting agency, the National Orientation Agency, to head. Just this morning, myself and Chimlin were lamented. I think we saw a story around the NLNG. Yeah. Chances are high that they might be declaring a force majeure over exports to Europe, over vandalization of pipelines. And, we've seen in recent times how even when security agencies catch people in the act, they say, oh, we're hungry. I was just trying to feed my family. Only recently, we saw the newly built second Niger bridge. Attempts are already ongoing to
dismantle it.
To dismantle the bridge. We've seen, visuals this time around. Thankfully, the CCTV cameras worked. We saw people, somebody, willfully coming down from a vehicle, expertly removing manhole covers, putting them inside his vehicle. And you have to ask, what exactly has gone on with our orientation as a people, where nothing is sacred anymore. What is supposed to be even for our own protection and safety, we don't even think that it is worth keeping anymore. As long as, there's profit to be made, people just think it's okay to take it. When you were at the helm of affairs at the National Orientation Agency, what did you consider your biggest challenge?
Well, first was then Nigerians were quick to blame the devil for everything. Now it's hunger. Blame the hunger for everything, every crime that we willingly plan for it, prepare for it, go out and commit it, then we blame someone else. Now, even at that, the real challenge that we faced was how to even get our leaders agree that we needed to have a common national value or common national values. I remember I wrote a memo to emirs and chiefs as custodian of our values and tradition. They are quick to give chieftaincy titles to people in the community for whatever reason. You don't really understand what those people, many of them, you don't understand what they have done, how they have actually sweated it out to contribute, to earn the resources they have to contribute to their society. So I now said, please give us a guide as to what constitutes your own value in your own state. Let us get from all the 36 states. We'll put it together, sit with you, Council of Chiefs, National Council of Chiefs. Let's agree that these are the national values of this country. Then let's propagate it. You maintain it. So if anybody comes with money to say he's whatever input he's making into your contribution is making in your community, try to find out how whether he certify the criteria, the value-based criteria that you have drawn up. Then you reward him to encourage others. So we now have heroes, mentors that mentees will be looking up to because they are upright and doing the right things. Believe me, I didn't get it right. I didn't. One of the chiefs, one of the emirs, wrote to me that we have been doing this thing before you were born. So who are you to ask us to tell you this thing? We give traditional title to whoever we want. But it's at the detriment of society. And I remember talking with one other. He told me that...
That was a response you got back?
That was the response I got.
From one person who decided to respond?
Yes.
How many of them responded?
Only to one. I had to go there. And he said, well, you have your... when I asked him, he said, that is your work, it's not my work. That's what he told me. And we moved from that to another subject matter. No response, nothing. I wrote to all of them. So unless, as a nation, we define our national values, tie it to our developmental aspirations, teach it, learn it, let it be everywhere in the public space. Let people see that, there is diligence, there is a reward for hard work, for commitment, for then you begin to look for, people will begin to look for expertise in order to participate within their small communities. And you see people learning this, and we carry it. We don't have it. When you go to the other places that will help you with some of these values are the churches and the mosques. I have been to both in the course of work.
We have a challenge there too.
There is a challenge. Big. It's so big that, I don't know, they said, I'm a Christian, they say don't talk bad or evil about men of God, I don't know. But look, they need to sit up. They need to lead by example. They need to check their followers. Those days, you will see a malam or priests will be visiting families to see how they live, what they do, and so forth and so on. We don't have all of this. And what are they teaching? They teach you, encourage you, they motivate you to donate for causes you don't understand. So a lot needs to be done. And that is why I say if we have a national culture, even our religion can be, can benefit from it.
We'll talk a little more about your experience while you were in government and see what can we learn. Can we, of course we can improve, but how? We'll talk about that when we come back in just a moment. Don't go away.
passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bowl Rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bowl Rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
When you sweat, you lose ions too. Reach for Pocari Sweat, similar to your body fluid. It is easily absorbed and rehydrates you faster. Replenish your ions with Pocari Sweat Iron Supply Drink.
Now, let me tell you about Safari Valley Eco Resort, the first of its kind in West Africa. Upon your arrival, you are introduced to your butler, who plans your itinerary.
We were surrounded by wildlife from the moment we entered the eco park.
So many activities, all in the same premises. Visit the gym or the stables, they have it all. At my break, I'm able to practice my putting.
We also went fishing on a man-made canal. Our tour guides taught us so much about the wildlife and how to interact with them.
They used only electric vehicles here. This creates a serene environment. I'm told it's over 1,000 acres. My cabin here sits on 2 acres with a large terrace space overlooking my private swimming pool. Now this is royalty. They have their own farms, thousands of fruit trees. I can also have my lunch here at the waterfall. Quite a beautiful place you have here.
Visit Safari Valley Eco Resort in Ghana, bringing you closer to nature.
We are passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bowl Rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bowl Rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Mary. Let me, piggyback on a question. One of your responses earlier about us needing to champion, so to speak, national values and all. I'm actually particularly glad, very, very glad indeed, that you talked about the national ethos, because it's one of the things that I've been talking about for a while. But when you talk about national values, I go straight to the Constitution, and Section 23 is very, very clear. The national ethics, perhaps another word for values, shall be discipline, integrity, dignity of labor, social justice, religious tolerance, self-reliance, and patriotism. Aren't these enough?
No. These are also part of what constitutes the mandate of the agency, of the NOA, promoting dignity of labor and all of that. Now, why I say is not enough is because I am not sure even those were factored in, those concepts were factored in as a result of any deep research on the attitude, behavior of citizens of this country, and a general aggregate agreement or acceptance that this should be our values. And if you have such enshrined in the Constitution, don't you know that, you should also know that in communities, there are nuances and behavior patterns that have become part and parcel of society. And you can see that the reward system is not based on these values that you read out, that is enshrined in our Constitution. It's not. So what we are saying is, let's take the boundary slightly deeper. Further away from these ones outlined in the Constitution, so that the values of dignity of labor should be properly highlighted. It's not about dignity of labor working in one office as messenger or something. Let it be values of labor in the community. Even as a farmer, let the farmer be named the Turaki or the Chiroma or the something of that village. It must not be someone who has gone to the city to make money, questionable wealth that would make giving the highest title in the village. That is the kind of value-driven life that we need to see.
Okay, well, if you say,
So
I mean, these aren't enough, pardon me, Mr. Mary, if you say that these aren't enough and they're enshrined in the Constitution, you've also underscored the fact that they are probably not a product of any serious research. So where do we go from here? I mean, you also made it clear that it is part of the assignment of the National Orientation Agency. Who else but the National Orientation Agency could champion the renewal of our direction? Well, Chamberlain actually cited the issue the other time that, you know, perhaps from your own experience, how is this a challenge? I'm pretty sure that in your considerations, you must have reasoned, okay, these things aren't enshrined in any serious research, so we need to go a step further and try to find words like that. What was your experience in that regard, and how do we get around this to ensure that every Nigerian can actually have, in the Constitution and anywhere else, values that are true to them and they can live with?
First, I tried to explain my experience on how the effort we made and the feedback we got. But if I had a second chance, perhaps I would have done it differently. How? I would have elevated that aspect of our national life into a theme of national discussion. Undertake a number of advocacy visits, work with a number of socio-cultural organizations apart from the traditional institution, and ensure that the professionals, the socio-cultural youth, everybody is able to, is engaged and able to make a contribution, so we now have a national template from which we can derive something. If everybody is we're talking about it, I'm sure. Just like we complain about fuel subsidy and all of that, let's talk about our values that way. Let's amplify it and talk about it.
Well,
then we'll get something out of it.
Well, Mr. Omeri, I'd like to also trail back to one of the points that you made earlier about Nigeria should have a development plan, how the country should have a development plan that leaders should abide by, regardless of their political affiliation. I wonder if the difference in, political party affiliation has impeded the implementation of development plans that Nigeria has had over the years, and if that is responsible for the big defections that we've seen in our recent democratic history. We've seen how state governors defected from their own political party to the ruling party. Ondo is recent in history, Edo is recent in history, Zamfara is also recent in history. And if that is also responsible for the different levels of development that we've seen in those states of the Federation. What are your thoughts on this?
You see, before now, this nation, during the Gawan era, even before then, had a national development plan. Up to the Shagari era, we had something that we were looking up to. It may not have been long-term, 100 years, 50 years, but at least there was something that you could see that they would take from and then create a national budget. This has been abandoned. Now, some of these state governors and governments that have come, you see, if you want to grow railways, let's have a culture of constructing railways for the nation. So that if the federal government is doing the laws, national policies, let the state governments be doing something. That is why you can have various types of railway, even roads. You have federal road, you have private road, you have state government roads. But all of these infrastructure complementing each other, it takes development to where it should go. But we don't have that. So you find a contradiction. While the national need is to ensure that our railway works, but the state government is busy thinking of how they can do one flyover for 18 billion naira in the city.
Well,
it's not solving the transport problem there. It's not helping commerce. It's not helping the movement of people, of goods and services.
But, Mr. Mary, besides the need for self-perpetuation that may inform the need for this defections that we have seen in our recent history, are there any bureaucratic concerns, you know, at the interaction between state government level and federal government level that impede that alignment with national development and, by extension, the National Development Plan?
Is the absence of it. Yes, these defections here and there, they are not done because people want to get something to develop. They only lie that they want to put their state in the center. It's just lie, another kind of lie. Okay, so what we need to see, if you are putting your state in the center, why are you putting your state in the center? Tell us. Is it because you want to do, there's a national policy on some kind of infrastructure that is being developed, and if you are not part of the government at the center, you will not get it? It shouldn't even be so, because a policy for Nigeria should be for Nigerians, whether it's APC or PDP, whoever is at the helm of affairs at the federal level. So you just key into it. We don't have to be in the political party, or it's just for self-perpetuation. You know, you are just looking for a platform to take power. Take the power, what to do with it, you don't know. There are state governments, some of them will go and put, this road is a federal government-owned road, but who is using it? And besides, we have it on record that people, they can come into discussion with federal government and say, this is your road, you don't have resources, we have, can we do it, you reimburse us? Has it not happened? Can't we do it? So you must not be another party to do it. And for anybody in the federal government who will stultify or deny what is due to any state on the basis of political persuasion is not patriotic, is not fit for leadership, must not be voted for, must not, definitely he's practicing. What is democracy first? Is it, what democracy, what is, sometimes I get worried, because you say, for instance, after an election, you defect to another party. Even the citizens cannot complain. They say you don't have locus. You don't have a locus standard or whatever they call it in law. When you are the actual voter, you are the owner, the custodian of the power that is vested, is given to someone. You voted. And they say you don't have locus to challenge anything. It's only the political parties that will do. It's only, and the people, the political party exists because they are people, they have members. So let us give more power, even though the power to elect of choice resides with the people. Let us give them more power to interrogate. Those institutions, they are public institutions created for this purpose. The NOA, of course, is one. Give it adequate support. There are public complaints commission. There is some others like that all around the country. But what are they doing? They are the weakest institutions in our system.
Well, we can only hope that some of these recommendations you're putting out will receive life, you know, under this new administration. But in trying to be optimistic now, Mr. Mary, the president has said, you know, so many right things. He said, let the poor breathe. He said, I campaigned for this job. I worked hard for it. Don't pity me. And he has, in fact, come up with a development plan on his recent speech, you know, where he outlined a number of things that the administration plans to do to cushion the recent economic hardship. Would you say that this plan is comprehensive enough? And is he surrounded, by the way, by the right people that will help to, you know, give life, execute this judiciously?
It may not be comprehensive enough. It can be better. But then look at it. Already, before the president finished reading out the interventions, some state governments are doing something different. They have started doing different things. So how do you succeed? That's just what I'm saying. Let's have a national culture of doing things.
Okay, so
that we complement each other.
All right, as we wind down on this, so could you tell us, what was the major impediment that stopped you from performing better than you did when you were DG of NOA?
I hate to say it, but I have to keep saying it, that the agency, first and foremost, need to be insulated from the vagaries of incompetent ministers of information like the last one. They must be properly funded. Because, and then the agency itself should also go out and look for funds. There are funds for it. So you don't wait. So if these three things can be sorted out, the agency will be better for it and Nigerians will be happier.
All right, tell us about your experience too when you were in office, because these days, I mean, it's been on for a long time really in this country. If you're applying for certain things, they will always ask you for state of origin. If you're applying for different things. But when it comes to national census, they scratch that bit. And then if you're going for any, application for probably your foreign travel, any documents in the country, driving, whichever one, they ask you for your name. While we were doing some registration for, I think it was inauguration of the president, and some state officials, SSS, did say, well, if anybody don't have name, if you don't have name, then you're not a Nigerian. But when it comes to elections, they disregard the name. They don't look to all of that. And people have argued, why can't we then all say, since we all say, well, we have name, you must have name to be a Nigerian, and use it to vote. No, it cuts to the chase. So what was the challenge when you were in office? Why didn't the government at the time develop a national database that we can call social security, such that that can be the data, the basis upon which the country can develop? States have a credible database, they can distribute palliatives or whatever they call it, and ensure we can plan properly with appropriate data.
I just don't want this program now to sound like lamentation, time for lamentation. The NIMC, National Identity Card Management System or something, was introduced, I think, by Obasanjo, or even before him, issue at our harmonizing our data at National Population Commission had been on. Then NIMC came to give us that card, which will give you a number, which will, that number, from what I was told at that time, I visited the agency, was it Chris somebody, I can't remember his second name, who was in charge then. The card was supposed to serve just like the
ATM card.
The ATM card is your social security identity number. It should give you access to a lot of things. So that is the data for Nigerians. All you need to do at any point in time, immigration anywhere, is to punch. If you see the data, what I have, you see everything about me. But Nigeria today is the port of data collection.
But Mr. Mayor, I remember at that time, sorry to jump in, the name of the minister just skipped me. The program failed massively. There was corruption in that particular program. We saw the data, the cards all over the place. Today, he's a free man.
If not dead.
Yeah.
But subsequent efforts were made. But again, the absence of national culture has eroded. People don't even, that cannot be done. That cannot be achieved because we're not doing it because as a nation, as a collection of people that want to achieve something.
Yeah, people saw it as that man's idea.
That's it.
That was his idea.
So this card, the full value for it, we have not obtained yet. Instead, we are introducing new ideas. We want to do this, we want to do this, all piled, and when one solution could have solved this problem. Now, if you go to telecoms, they are taking your data. You go everywhere, they are taking data.
In fairness, though, I know that now there is now an attempt to harmonize data. I mean, if you want to get driver's license, for instance, or a national passport, you must have your name. But people are saying that the only place where this doesn't seem to apply is for INEC. INEC seems to be the only body that is not requiring a name. And people are saying, look, that needs to change.
Yes.
But I am just wondering, when you look at, because initially what we're looking to talk about is how people internalize government policies and the political and economic policies of government. So I'm just wondering sometimes, because you've talked about the affiliation of the Ministry of Information with that of the National Orientation Agency. And this information that, the government policies are supposed to percolate to the very bottom. I know NOA is supposed to have offices in all 774 local government areas of the Federation. But one has to ask, how effective are they in disseminating this information? People, for instance, this subsidy removal now, people are still wondering, You know, people are still looking to government. They think this is government increasing the price. People are yet to understand that what it means is that, you know, the laws of demand and supply are now in force, and it is whatever it is the market says that you'll buy petrol at. So I'm just wondering, do the agencies themselves understand the policies? Talk more of now disseminating it to the people. I'm just wondering, was there a peculiar, because you also had the subsidy brouhaha during your time as well, and you saw how much of a challenge that was. Yeah. How difficult is it for even the people who work at NOA to assimilate these policies before they now start to distribute them?
Okay. You see, there is a difference between information, communication, and public affairs. Close as they appear. They are intertwined, no doubt about it, but they are different. Now, if you are introducing a policy, information gives the facts. Communication processes it and communicates the facts to the people. And public affairs can do other aspects of communication. They are intertwined, all right. Now, if you are introducing a policy where the implementer himself has his own biases that has not been purged because of this national drive that you're talking about, his attitude to it first is of resentment based on his own feelings, his own appreciation of it. So you are bringing an issue that the people are already complaining they can't, even they cannot come to work, cannot fuel their vehicle, cannot pay school fees, cannot do this, and you want them to go on air and tell people that it's the best policy.
It's going to be a problem.
It's a problem.
Well, we'll have to, fortunately, these are some of the issues, and we couldn't even take it a little further in terms of religion, because you look at Saudi Arabia, look how developed they are. Look at Israel, look at how developed they are. But when it comes here and we come with religion, just look at us. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing to ourselves, really? Well, thank you for coming on. Mr. Michael Mary, DG, former DG of NOA.
Thank you. I hope I'll have the chance one day to discuss this religious thing with you.
Yeah, we will soon. Well, that is it from here. Let's head over now to Lagos.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Disruptions and rapidly changing business landscapes requires a cultivated mindset and strategic core competences to flourish. Equip yourself to flourish with Techsem UK's strategic leadership for success in a digital age. Leveraging Techsem's tested and proven methodology and led by distinguished faculty, Professor John Peters, Professor Paul Griffith, Ambassador Charles Crawford, and UK Member of Parliament Sir James Doddridge. The 4-day program holds on Doubletree by Hilton, London, from August 21st to 24th, 2023. Cost £4,469,750 naira after a 10% discount, covering study materials, 5 nights of hotel accommodation at Hilton, meals and certificate. For more information, visit www.techsem.co.uk. Email exec@techsem.co.uk. Call or text +44 7425 883791.
Techsem, insights that inspire, actions that change the world.
To give the confidence that only comes from knowing you are fully sorted. to show up for you just when you need a hand. And when retirement comes with all its worries and storms, to ensure we will stand by you and give you the coverage that you deserve. Make the perfect choice. Choose PAL Pensions today.
PAL Pensions, your pal for life.
No move taken by the Nigerian government, for example, as part of the regional bloc, has been taken in isolation. What I mean by that is that the Nigerian government has acted on the authority provided by the consensus position taken by the bloc itself, by all members of the ECOWAS heads of state, concerning financial sanctions and many others. I can also report that following the expiration of the deadline of the ultimatum and standing on the pre-existing consensus position of financial sanctions meted out on the military junta in Niger Republic by the bloc of ECOWAS heads of state, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has ordered an additional slate of financial sanctions through the Central Bank of Nigeria on entities and individuals related to or involved with the military junta in Niger Republic.
Well, that's the next conversation we want to have this morning ahead of the ECOWAS meeting about the coup in Niger with the expiration of the deadline. A host of people have been talking about it. Some meetings held yesterday, as we have demonstrated to you on the front pages of the papers this morning. But Professor Demola Abbas joins us this morning. He's a professor of international law and global affairs analyst. He's a visiting senior research fellow, University of Reading in the UK, and he was at some point a special advisor to Lagos State Governor on overseas affairs and investment. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, clearly there have been quite a number of steps taken by different interests groups about the coup in Niger. Some have identified one or two of those steps as missteps, and some have said, you know, all kinds of shades of opinions have emanated and so on. So far, what are your thoughts? There's another meeting holding today, but before that meeting, let's have a conversation around what your thoughts are about the steps that have been taken, the processes so far, and the reactions of Niger and a number of other global interests.
Well, once again, thanks for having me. Look, it's a very loaded question because there's a lot of misconceptions going on and misunderstanding of the processes itself. First, I think what has provoked a lot of reactions was a report, right or wrong, that the president of Nigeria had requested the Senate, for instance, to deploy troops to Niger, you know, in response to the recalcitrance of the coup plotters in Niger. That is one side. We'll come to that in a moment. But in terms of the processes itself, what ECOWAS has done so far is to impose sanctions, strap the air, economic sanctions and this and that. These are within the authority of ECOWAS to do. ECOWAS is an international organization, albeit a sub-regional organization in Africa here. We only have one continental organization in Africa, that is the African Union itself. ECOWAS has got 15 member states, all of which voluntarily signed up to ECOWAS Treaty in 1975, precisely May 28th. I think the only member that was not a founding member at that point in time was Cape Verde, which joined them in 1977, just 2 years after. So all of them were voluntary. They voluntarily joined ECOWAS. And when you join an international organization, so you assume certain obligations, under that particular a constituent treaty, be it an instrument, be it a treaty or convention that brings it together. So ECOWAS member states voluntarily subjected themselves to certain obligations and responsibilities by accepting to be members of the association or the organization. So therefore, you have community norms. These are the norms of ECOWAS, which have been established consistently either by its own treaty of 1975, reviewed and revised in 1993, and you have so many protocols that will come to later. And all these instruments lay down certain principles and guidelines, and also certain, punitive measures if any member state will violate the norms of ECOWAS. So Niger violated the norms of ECOWAS, which is to allow what is called an unconstitutional change of government in Niger. When that happens, it's normal that the organization will have to respond to its members by saying, look, we agree that we will not allow an unconstitutional changeover of government in our member state. This has happened in your state. And because this has happened, ECOWAS has got to take measures. There are measures that you as a country has also agreed to. One of them is we are going to impose sanctions on you, and we might decide to suspend you. And when we suspend you during that time, you still have to implement whatever sanctions we impose on you. So everything ECOWAS has done so far actually has been in accordance with its own principles and regulations.
That raises a question for me. How well or seriously do countries, these countries that you talk about, percolate that information to their citizens? The question is because, of course, we are not unaware of the reaction of Nigerians and some Nigerians also to the declarations and the initiatives that have been taken by, by the ECOWAS already. Electricity cut off in the Niger and the reactions that are following that, which you say, yes, Nigerians signed to in 1975, but the citizens today have no idea what all of that is. So it begs the question of whether or not we are carrying our people along in our decisions for them.
Ayo, that's a very vital, of course, important point you've raised. And it's important because it goes to the root, cause of the major problems that are faced in Africa by African organizations. Whether you are African Union, or you are ECOWAS, or you are SENSAD, or you are ECAS, or you are SADC, no matter what you are in Africa. And that is the question of what is the relationship between your organization and the citizenry of that particular hemisphere. And we don't do that very well in Africa. As an example, in EU, as an example, almost every European Union is taught what EU is all about. There are courses in EU in schools. You understand the process. You understand what the European Union means. They form part of the syllabi and this and that in the schools. And you'll be shocked that even from, as early as from primary schools, education, they are already taught. So citizens actually understand what the processes are. But because organizations in Africa are formed on very pali level, my brother, my sister, my this and that. So you have leaders who bring them together to form an organization, not primarily to advance the cause of citizenry as much as to advance their own personal and individual causes. So there is no felt need at any point in time to actually carry the citizens along. You will carry your citizens along if they are the primary reason, or they are the reason that you are forming the organization for. Let me give an example. When the Organization of African Unity was formed in 1963, OAU. OAU was formed at a time when much of Africa was still under colonialism. So we felt at that point in time we needed all the free states in Africa to come together and use their muscle to be able to pressurize the colonialists to give colonial independence to remaining countries in Africa, including South Rhodesia, that former Zimbabwe, and so on and so forth. So there was need for number at that point in time. So nobody could really adhere to the principle of human rights and this and that. And in 1963, we thought all those principles were just luxurious. What we wanted in 1963 first was to get independence from imperialists, from colonialists. And that was why Nkrumah said that seek ye first political kingdom, everything shall be added unto it. So that was what led back to the OAU. So there were no concrete principles and rules that were guiding OAU in terms of human rights and what have you. Now, fast forward 2000, when the African Union was going to be formed from the death of OAU. I mean, I was opportuned to work for the African Union in 2005 as an expert who drafted a treaty between an MOU between the African Union and regional organization, what you call REX, with that regional economic communities like ECOWAS and ECAS and SENSAD and what have you. And the argument we had then in the academic point of view was that was the time for African leaders to sit back and put citizenry at the core of what they were going to do at that point in time. That let's learn the lessons from the failure of the OAU. OAU didn't really serve the continent very well, but after Zimbabwe became independent, the original political reason for the formation of AU died. But they couldn't transform into the new millennium because they didn't carry people along, and AU became as dead as dodo. So it was necessary that AU was going to emerge, but on what principle? And I remember then arguing that, look, all we should do in Africa was for our leader to say, we are only going to start on a very microscopic level. Take democratic countries in Africa, about 5 or 6 of them, to say, let's form a union, just like the European Union started, with the EEC. Just 6 countries, basically, at that point in time. Let's start with a small share of countries that are already democratic, that have put human rights at the core, that have put their people's sanctity, their people protection and advancement at the core of the community values. Start with that. Call it the African Union on a very small level. Then when you establish your principles and they are well grounded, begin to invite, let individual member states that are not begin to, apply to become members. Then you can say, well, you want to become member of African Union? Do you have human rights? Do you put people this and that? Do you have employment? Do you establish all those, just as the European Union did? Well, but unfortunately, we didn't do that. What did we do in 2000? We brought all countries again into the AU. And that is a problem. There's never a deliberate attempt to carry African citizenry along the formation of, and that answers your question. And that is why there's never a need. We never have a felt need to explain what we are doing to the citizens.
Well, Mr. Abbas, you know that just to buttress that, there will be a huge question mark on the commitment to the principles establishing the union. When you look at what brought about the coup in Niger, for instance, we've cited the coupists have cited desertification, poverty, population explosion, corruption, and just to tie it also to the conditions in those states that are bordering Niger in Nigeria, the conditions are similar. So if you consider that there is language similarity, Hausa is spoken in Niger, Kanuri is spoken in Niger, how real is the possibility of that coup contagion, for it to trickle down to Nigeria, hence, the rallying of ECOWAS?
But it's a very vital point you raised, Bukola. It's vital because it is a chicken and egg situation. It's a kind of damn you do, damn you don't. For people who are saying, oh, you know what, the coup is very popular and this and that, but the truth is, coups are going to be popular anyway. Because if you don't agree with soldiers when they take over, you're not going to go on the street and start campaigning against them. They will mow you down. And number one. Number two, it is natural for soldiers, however, when they take over government unconditionally to say, we are doing it, they have to justify why they are taking over. It doesn't mean that the reasons they are advancing actually are, legitimate. It doesn't mean that, those reasons, we should accept them. But they have reasons. But whether soldiers have taken over or not, the question is, are those conditionalities existing in Niger? Of course, they are existing in Niger. In fact, they are existing in most of Africa. But does that then give the right to now say, so therefore, we must have one democratic government? And that is a question of trickling down. Look, and that's what I say is a damn you do, damn you don't question. If ECOWAS does not put its feet down, and I'm not saying go and use force, I'll come to that discussion later. If ECOWAS does not put its feet down against its member state, it's happened in Mauritania. In fact, Mauritania withdrew its membership in 2000. The only country that has withdrawn from ECOWAS in 2000, tried to readhere in 2017. It happened there. Mali happened. Burkina Faso happened. Guinea happened. So the question is, when will it stop? If it continues, then the question is, what is the value of the treaty that you signed to, that you wouldn't want this to? In other words, ECOWAS cannot sign a treaty, member states cannot sign a treaty, and then say, well, we've signed this treaty, we have committed that there will be no unconstitutional takeover of government, but we don't care. Now we are going to keep on doing it. You don't expect ECOWAS to so they fold its arms and say, well, it's okay. Oh, because it's your country. Oh, because all these conditions also happen in Nigeria and they happen in Ghana, so therefore we are going to allow you. If you allow that, where would the road stop? It could stop, it to go to the other people. That begs the question, of course, of are there things that ECOWAS should be doing inside its member states to make sure the conditions that lead to those situations as Niger do not arise in the first place? That's $1 billion question that we must address.
Well, Professor Abbas, it seems like sanctions are not working. If Ayo talked about the power cut, even the U.S. announced, the withdrawal of aid to the tune of $100 million. So it seems like sanctions are not working. Is ECOWAS, taking into cognizance the more real contention of interests of other powers in Niger and in, other neighboring countries on the Coup belt, i.e. Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea?
Well, ECOWAS is not a naive organization by any standard. They're a key player. Don't forget, we've got a long history of solving crises in West Africa. Go back to when he started in Liberia in 1997. Go back to when he went to Sierra Leone. In fact, ECOWAS will be the first organization in Africa as a whole, if not anywhere in the world, that will restore a democratically elected government that was overthrown by coup. And that was when it restored Tijan Kaba in Sierra Leone in 1998. That would be the first time it will happen in Africa. So ECOWAS had a track record of that. However, the conditionalities in 1998 that led to the restoration of Tijan Kaba in Sierra Leone are different radically from what we have today in Niger. And ironically, Nigeria played a critical role in installing Tijan Kaba in 1998. And that was the biggest irony. It was a military regime in Nigeria, Abacha, that actually led ECOMOG to go and restore a democratic government in Sierra Leone, whereas today it's a civilian government that is trying now to, it's quite interesting. But it's an interesting question, because, as I said, ECOWAS is not naive, and there are many interests that are intertwined here, and that is going to go, I'm not preempting, I think we're going to discuss whether we should use force or not. That is going to go to the question of what are we going to do if sanctions fail. And sanctions are not going to bite very hard because, to be honest with you, number one, Nigeria is the most robust player in West Africa here. So when you're talking about ECOWAS imposing sanctions, you're talking about Nigeria largely imposing sanctions and a few other states. But in terms of U.S. imposing sanctions or France, well, it's quite iffy. It's iffy because as they are going to be doing that, Russia is also trying to get a foothold. Don't forget, in Central African Republic, you already have Wagner in Central African Republic. They just, a few days ago, they signed an agreement now with the Niger Coupists that they can come to Niger. Niger has the largest deposit of uranium.
The U.S. has in fact expressed concern in
that
about
that. Well, they can express concern. Nigerians are not going to care about that. But the truth is, what I'm saying is that the interests are intertwined. There's uranium in that country, which has been mined consistently by France and some other countries.
Can ECOWAS match up to that, to those interests?
Well, that ECOWAS will match up to those interests if ECOWAS himself is not being pocketed by those interests.
Which raises the question, if I can quickly follow up on the conversation, that the trajectory that Bukola started. So it would seem like Africa is a play field of sorts for world powers. We've had British Prime Minister at some point, Russia-Africa Conference, China-Africa Conference, France-Africa Conference, US-Africa Conference. So it's like the jostle is now for Africa. Everyone wants to come to Africa. I go back to the issue I raised about the interest of the people. You've spoken about, so loftily too, about the fact that ECOWAS is not naive, and consequently you're saying the EU is not naive. But then it would seem like there are more individualistic approach to issues than regional or collegiate approach by these institutions. Consequently, it's easier for these world powers that Bukola talks about to break the ranks, if I can use it, say it that way.
Well, that is apt. But it doesn't only happen in ECOWAS. We have it in the United Nations, as big as the UN is. Look, United States pays.
But does it happen in the EU?
It happens in the EU. Whatever France and Germany want in the EU, sometimes they can steamroller themselves in. However, let's compare apple with oranges. Let's compare apple with apple in the sense that when you talk about European Union, for instance, you're talking about an organization that is supranational. That's number one. You know that when you are supranational, you know that the organization has certain powers beyond the member states themselves. We don't have a single supranational organization in Africa. You must understand that. Yet, I mean, Africa, we don't have one. I don't think we are going to get there anytime soon at all, because what it takes to get to supranationality is you are conceding a substantial part of your sovereignty to that organization. And if you disagree, you just have to withdraw, which is what Britain did, which is Brexit, basically. So we haven't got to that state in Africa. I don't think African leaders actually minded to that particular point. But in terms of the interest and what you are talking about, let's look at it from this angle. ECOWAS as an organization comprises different, countries, about 15 countries that had different colonial experiences. You only have 5 English-speaking countries in ECOWAS. You've got about 8 French-speaking countries in ECOWAS, and only 2 that are, Portuguese, and 1 Arabic, Mauritania, which has already left ECOWAS. ECOWAS doesn't really, and that goes to does ECOWAS give anything to its member states to actually make them to want to listen to that organization? They don't, just like the African Union. Because when you're talking about the ability of an organization to go against its member state, basically, you're talking about what are the sticks, what are the carrots. Turkey is one of the finest countries in Europe today, one of the strongest economies in Europe. That's Turkey as a country. Turkey is not a member of the European Union. Turkey is doing everything to join the EU because Turkey knows that if it becomes a member of the European Union, it means Turkish students could go and study in Europe and pay home fee like any European. Turkish farmers will get subsidies. There will be borderless Europe for Turks and this and that. So there are a lot of carrots you get. But when you violate a community norm, European norm, there are sticks. They will clumber you with sanctions, and those sanctions will bite massively. So we haven't got that at all.
Anyway, it's interesting why you put it that way, but I think Marco has a question for you. Go ahead.
And again, we're seeing that the conversation all boils down to values, that, the ECOWAS has to actually define what its values are. But let me quickly take you up on what has happened so far. I mean, our reaction, that's ECOWAS's reaction to the coup in Niger. Some people have said that it's been a mistake from the get-go. I know that they were trying to put out a very strong statement when they had that initial meeting here in Abuja. But do you think that it was a mistake to have also tabled use of force as part of, some of the options that they were considering? Because some analysts have said that that was a mistake from the get-go. Do you agree with them?
Thank you very much, Mark. Absolutely not. I don't agree with them, and I will explain why not. As I was explaining earlier on, and you join an organization voluntarily, and one of the treaties or one of the protocols signed by ECOWAS member state, there was one in 1999, very powerful. There was one in 2001. Now, those 2 protocols, 1999 and 2001, make it very clear. Precisely the one in 2001 is called Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance. Now, that protocol in Article 45 makes it clear that if there is an unconstitutional change of government in a member state, then ECOWAS could authorize the use of force. The same thing is contained in Article 10, paragraph C of the 1999 protocol relating to the mechanism for conflict resolution, peacekeeping, security, and prevention. Again, it gives ECOWAS the right to use force in its member state. However, the use of force or military solution is not the first place to start. It is graduated. ECOWAS could decide to impose sanctions, and it has been doing that. Just like the United Nations itself, you impose sanctions. If sanctions do not bite, if they do not work, nothing stops you from authorizing the use of force. So if anybody is saying, well, ECOWAS shouldn't have threatened use of force, then they don't understand how international organizations work. They're not conversant with the protocols and the treaties of ECOWAS, all of which give ECOWAS the power to use force if it must use force against its member state. However, and that is a caveat, it does not mean that in every situation there is a coup or any kind of unconstitutional change of government, you must immediately use force or you must go to use force. That is not the argument here. So I'm separating the legal appropriateness of ECOWAS to use force, which it has the right to do. I'm separating that from whether in this particular situation, the occasion has risen for it now to go and use force. And I don't think, and then that's another misconception. President Asiraju did not say, we are taking ECOWAS to go and use force. What he was talking about, number one, let me make some clarification. Nigeria, as a member of ECOWAS, cannot on its own decide to take ECOWAS to go and use force. No. Nigeria is just 1 out of 15 countries. All the countries must agree to go and use force. So once the Mediation and Security Council, the MSC of ECOWAS, agrees to go and use force, and they've decided, then it behoves on individual member states, just like Nigeria and any other ECOWAS member, to then go to their own parliament to seek authorization for that nation to be able to deploy its troop. So there are 2 different approvals here. An approval done by ECOWAS itself, among its own member states, to go and use force against a misbehaving member state. That is one. Once that is done, it doesn't mean that all those members there automatically will send troops there. You then have to go back home and then tell your government or tell your president, will then go to the Senate and say, well, we want to join the troops that are going to deploy. Let me give you an example. In 1997, there was a major crisis, no, 2000, while ECOWAS deployed in Sierra Leone, and United Nations deployed its own mission, United Nations Observer Mission in Sierra Leone, UNAMSIL. There was a crisis between ECOWAS, which wanted to use force in Sierra Leone to restore peace, and United Nations, we did not want to use force. It was so bad that Nigeria and Ghana, if you remember very well, had to withdraw from that particular mission, although they went back. That tells you something. Individual members of ECOWAS can take actions when you collectively agree to go and use force and say, okay, we've decided to go and use force, but as a country, my parliament has not agreed that I should deploy my troops. So that is a different issue entirely. So straight away, for those who are saying ECOWAS made a mistake in saying that there was no mistake, the law is loud and clear. It has a right to authorize use of force. It must. However, I'm saying on this occasion, the question is it as occasion and reason now for you to go and use force? That's $1 billion question.
Well, some people also said that the 7-day ultimatum which was given to Niger was too short. I mean, if there were going to be negotiations, there were going to be sanctions, there were going to be mediation, you know, all of that had to come within a certain period. We've seen those attempts now, but it would seem that what has really riled Niger, and we've also seen the, will I say, Mali and Burkina Faso saying, look, an attack on Niger will be an attack on us. It would seem that what has really taken the attention has been ECOWAS's threat that, you know, the use of force was not off the table. So I think that's basically where a lot of people too are also saying maybe that could have been a mistake. But right now, today, they're supposed to have another meeting. What do you think that ECOWAS should be looking at as a next step to take on this matter of Niger?
Well, thank you very much, Mark. That's a very important question. And let me start with your last question. ECOWAS still has a lot of things to do before it can even talk about the use of force in Niger. As an example, even if ECOWAS were to agree, if every member of ECOWAS will agree today on the use of force, make no mistake, it doesn't mean that ECOWAS can go and use force. For any regional organization anywhere in the world, and quote me on this, to use force, you must seek the authorization of the Security Council under Chapter 8 or precisely Article 53 of the UN Charter. It forbids any regional organization to use force without the authority of Security Council. And we know very well that Security Council will never agree to that anyway, because China and Russia can preemptively are not going to, you know, play ball with that. They will never support that. And all of you must agree, or two of them must abstain. That is one question. So let's put that one aside. That even if all ECOWAS member states agree, there is no legitimacy for that use of force unless Security Council approves it. And I don't want to go into academic debate about what is called ex post facto authorization. That's a different, let's leave that to the academia for now. So that is there. So I think for now, what ECOWAS should do is to look deeply into its own treaties and the protocols and say, has it been doing enough in respect of how its own member states actually deliver their democratic promises to their citizenry? I think that is what ECOWAS has not been doing very well. ECOWAS should not be rearing its head only when unconstitutional changes of government take place in its member state. We know its treaty forbids that, its protocols forbid that, but then you should have a system in which ECOWAS is able to enthrone, you know, to empower people in member state jobs, make sure that your member state do what the European Union does, basically. That is to learn on how to deliver democratic value, democratic, you know, dividends to your people. When you don't do that, then there's a problem at the end of the day. That is what is not being done, and that is what I think ECOWAS should be looking at. Number two, ECOWAS needs to collaborate very closely with the African Union on this. I haven't heard so much about it because don't forget, Niger is in West Africa, but Niger is in Africa. And African Union takes premiership when it comes to issue of peace and security in Africa. But that is again one thing that we have not done very well. The third thing is ECOWAS needs to collaborate more closely with the United Nations. That, God forbid, if this should ripen into war, Nigeria itself and all ECOWAS member states come together cannot prosecute a war successfully, you know, against Niger. And that is because you have Niger also being supported by countries like Russia. the other day, Wagner signed an agreement with the new government in Niger. So there's so much to clear before you even begin to think about the use of force. And that is why I say that legally speaking, yes, ECOWAS can use force, but politically speaking, it is suicidal at this point in time for anybody to even think about the use of force. But more importantly is that ECOWAS needs to begin to look into its own values, human rights values, democratic values, and everything that a modern, a 21st century compliant organization should deliver to its people should start looking into that. It should not only be shouting and screaming when one of its own member states decide to go the coup way, which obviously is when one of their own colleagues get bumped off. They shouldn't be shouting only when that happens. They must take all those things on board.
Well, I think essentially that has summarized a lot of the criticism that we've seen on this particular matter. But what do you also make of those who say that this is not so much a coup against the president? I mean, Bazoum only took power in 2021. He was only elected in 2021. And some people say this is not so much a coup against Bazoum as it is a rejection of France's overbearing influence on Francophone African nations.
Well, I've read a lot about that. If that was the case, then congratulations to the Francophone Africans. That is, if that actually happens to be the case. Because indeed, and that is why ECOWAS really has not really functioned very well for a long time. Because there is this endemic and very systemic suspicion of Nigeria as a regional hegemon within ECOWAS. It goes back to in Liberia, don't forget Liberia and Sierra Leone, when Nigeria was mobilizing, ECOMOG to go into those two countries to go and stabilize, and as ECOMOG said, to go and stop the senseless killing, for instance, in Liberia at that point in time. France wasn't very happy. Francophonie Africa did not actually play ball because they were suspicious of Nigeria. Maybe, who knows, maybe 25 years down the road, they've suddenly woken up and thought, you know what, it's high time we reclaimed our country, from France. Yeah. I'm saying it is in the public there, but I'm not entirely.
Do you see it happening? Do you see that deliverance, if I can use the term?
Well, look, it's not something that is going to happen overnight. They always say Rome was not built in a day. It just so happens, and it wasn't destroyed in a day either.
This is not Rome, this is Africa. But quick one on this one, just about 30 seconds if you can take it. Yeah. What should be the preparation or action to be taken by the states that border Niger? 7 of them.
Oh, well, that's very interesting because whether there's going to be use of force or not, and I hope there will be no use of force, already this is going to create tension. There's going to be movement already. I'm learning that some nationals, I don't want to say Nigerians alone, in Niger are already getting jittery that if ECOWAS, there will be retaliation. So, for instance, Office of Migration, both within and internationally, we'll have to start preparing to receive some new refugees. Northeast is in that Sahel, especially, there's going to be a knock-on effect. And unfortunately, if this happens, it means Nigerians are going to be refugees themselves. Then where do they go? It was different from 1997, 2000, when Liberia and Sierra Leone happened. A lot of Liberian refugees came down to Nigeria. But then, so we need a lot of preparation to start making. Because and that is why I think ultimately we need to douse the tension immediately and begin to look for an amicable and peaceful resolution of the conflict.
Thank you so much, Prof. I mean, it's a lot of work, and as you said, let's hope that the outcome of today's meeting by ECOWAS is going to, show some, how do we say, light at the end of the tunnel.
Amen to that.
Professor Ademola Abbas is a professor of international law and is a global affairs analyst. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me again. Thank you.
Well, some of your own contribution to this program are here now. This one is it's an email from Usmanovic, who says, indirectly, the war has been declared, and I certainly need nobody to interpret the meaning of sanctions and border closure as over 106 trucks of onions of our members in Mile 12 International Market have been trapped and already dripping water.
Oh, there you go. Well, this one is from Dakbo Oduwole. He says, my question is this. What is the function of ECOWAS, AU, and UN in respect of corrupt political leaders to justify their posture when a corrupt leader is ousted for bad governance and corruption? If they're mute during bad rule, then they lack justification. Well, that's from Dakbo Oduwole. Malpe.
And this tweet from Festus Akimboyewa says, it's not correct to say that we don't have Nigeria's national values. Majority of Nigerians have a belief in freedom, tolerance of others, respecting and upholding the rule of law, hard work, and dignity of labor. Sadly, these values are not allowed to flourish and develop. These values must be taught in our schools, and there must be strong institutions that will help develop these values. I think essentially that's what Mr. Michael Mary was saying, how to nationalize these values which we already know and we are taught in schools. How do they play in our national existence, Jimmy?
Well, at this point in time, I'm going to have to read the second stanza of National Anthem, considering what all of us are going through. So I'd like you all to see it as well, so that you can go with us as we just take you through all of that, because we need these prayers. O God of creation, direct our noble cause. Guide our leaders right. Help our youth the truth to know. In love and honesty, to grow and living just and true. Great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Musa. Goodbye.
Indeed, maybe we should have that prayer pasted somewhere. We say it every morning. Say it every morning, wherever it is you are. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm Malkwe Ogunyosef. Goodbye.
And after saying the prayers, go out and do the work. Thank you for watching. I'm Bukola Koka.
Did I hear anyone say amen? Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Site channelstv.com has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.